The movie is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. So, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is the story of a young group of probably post Gen Z, whatever that is, like really young, like just out of high school, college kids getting together for a hurricane party at one of their rich dad's houses. All these kids are super affluent and they're all on TikTok and they all constantly have their phones out and are plugged into social media and they all get together to drink and do copious amounts of drugs and listen to music really loud when one of them suggests in the middle of the night, hey, we should play a game called Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. But like Werewolf, somebody looks for the killer in the room, and you know, it's a playful game where people get kind of mad. But suddenly, in the dark, the game turns deadly, and the movie becomes a whodunit of who could have done and currently continue to be doing the murderers, if it's anybody here at all. The movie's out from A24. It's a smaller horror feature from second feature film time director. What is her name? Halina
Reijn.
Reijn, Reijn, yeah. And the movie stars a small cast of up and comers. Maria Bakalova from Borat 2, namely, that's where she made her name. Rachel Sano, a young comedian. Pete Davidson, Lee Pace from the Hobbit movies is in this movie. The movie is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Andy, what'd you think?
So some of this works and some of it doesn't. I was really looking forward to this for a long time. It was an A24 joint, and we really, you know, it's this twist on it's the Gen Z demographic squarely, and it's a bunch of frenemies kind of going after each other. This mystery of who's the killer in this bunch. I was a little disappointed. There are, like I said, there are some good things. I think it's shot well. I think the performances are actually really strong, but the main narrative is just a little weak. It doesn't really grab you. It's not really scary. It's supposed to be a dark comedy, I guess, and it's not particularly comedic. None of the jokes really land. I think it does fail the 6 laugh test. But there are some good moments and, you know, some positive things to talk about as well.
Yes. Bodies, 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 I should have said at the open, as a horror comedy for anybody who maybe hasn't seen the trailer, doesn't know. So you're going to get some horror, you're going to get some laughs. I think I was a bit more glowing on it than Andy. I think it's good, but it's not great. It doesn't quite elevate to where I hope a lot of A24 movies do, but it still does something different. And if you aren't too caught up in comparing it to like other films that have come before, you may see this as something of particular original. If you're well read in the space and you've seen a lot of films like this, maybe with like, you know, woke young folks, you know, committing violence for funsies, like, I don't know, Fight Club or Clockwork Orange, or more recently Thoroughbreds, maybe even something like Superbad or Booksmart, then yeah, you may think this is like really something clever and unique. It does have some redeeming factors that I do want to talk about. There are things I liked about this movie, but it just falls a hair short. And I was kind of expecting more than I should have. I kind of knew going in it wasn't going to be a big thing. It's an independent A24 film, you know, like it's not going to be a giant thing. But I don't know. I guess I was hopeful, you know, because I've seen so many unique things happen in the space, and in horror comedy, it's a really, really cool space to play in for a filmmaker. And I hope this would do a little more than it does. I do want to talk about what works first, because I think there's a lot of things that work that people will enjoy when they watch this movie. It is not all bad. It is good. I thought Bodies, Bodies, Bodies was good. I did, but let's get into it. First things first, our very limited cast. Andy, there are 7 people in this movie.
Yes.
That is it. It's even in the credits list. There's not a lot of people. We have 2 boys and 5 girls. And like you said, they are all frenemies. They all have a bit of a past. Every one of them seems to have a parents who are agonizingly rich, who are not in the film at all. And they all arrive at one boy's party, Pete Davidson's character specifically, who's named David, to have a big hurricane party when the hurricane comes into town. So, knowing it's a hurricane party, no cell phone service, lights are going to be out, nobody's coming to help you, you know, and they see this as like a fun retreat where they can get together and do a ton of drugs and party and turn up the music loud. And this is spoiled when their friend shows up with their new girlfriend, who is uniquely sober and doesn't actually do any drugs. And then that's where you start to get just a little bit of tension in the movie. Well, like, well, hey, you're here and we're not going to be able to have as much fun doing, you know, all kinds of mind-bending activities because we feel like we have to tiptoe around you. And that's just the beginning of a little bit of drama that turns into a deadly game of bodies, bodies, bodies. I like everybody in this, I think. Some shine more than others. Pete Davidson's great. Rachel Sennott is really great. I've never seen her in anything. She might be Sennott, but I think it's Sennott. She's really funny. She's really funny in this movie. I actually like Lee Pace for what he does in it. He plays this kind of out of place 40 something guy. He's one of the girl's boyfriends, and everybody's like, why'd you bring that guy? Who is that dude? You know, and then that's a fun element. And Maria Bakalova, I want to say, is kind of our lead. She plays was like a foreign exchange student who's just tagged along with the sober friend. And she's good in some of the emotional parts, but I do think she did not do a great job of emoting being horrifically frightened. You know, there's when you start finding dead bodies of friends at a house at night in the dark, you don't know who's doing it. Like that's pretty psychologically twisted, and most everybody else seems to hang, and if they can't, it's because their character is like outlandishly high. So I get it. Like I get it. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Like that fits you, but she's supposed to be kind of a bit more focused, and I don't think I don't know. I wasn't super convinced, but I like her. She's pretty good. Also shout out to Amanda Stenberg, who's great. And any thoughts on our very limited cast?
Yeah, so I think one of the things the movie does real well is create tension and uncomfortable a sense of uncomfortableness between everyone, because these aren't like really adults, they're like proto adults. And what I mean is it's just like there's
Yes.
a lot of like courtesies that are just kind of left out, like Sophie and B, our main kind of duo, show up kind of unannounced, and everyone's surprised to see them. They're like, oh, no one knew you were coming, but she's friends with everyone, so no one's going to tell her to leave either, you know. And it's like it's weird that she's there because they're partying pretty hard, and she's like, oh no, I'm sober now.
Right.
And then she's also showing up with a new girlfriend, which apparently, this is kind of like a social circle that has dated each other all, so that's also weird too. And then there's lots of just that kind of situation where everyone's a little uncomfortable with each other. Everyone's got history, some good, a lot bad, but they're still good enough to be hanging out. That just creates so much tension between everyone. And like I said, I think the performances themselves are pretty good. It's just that the narrative overall isn't super strong. Maria Bakalova, of course, very good from Borat 2. She like Zach was saying, she doesn't really have a whole lot to do.
No, she's not given a lot of lines, and she kind of mumbles the lines she has because her character's supposed to be meek and feel out of place. And like, I get that, like, she would feel very out of place with this group of individuals. But yeah, like it just comes off as a weak character, like, and she doesn't have a lot of opportunities to really shine. There's a couple of like actually good emotional scenes where I think like her talent really comes out, but yeah, she's not really given a lot of opportunity. And a big part of the reason that is because the movie is really dark, not just in tone, visually very dark. The lights are out almost the whole movie. You get a lot of scenes of characters kind of stumbling around in the dark, lots of using their phone lights, lots of using glow sticks to see. And that stuff's really clever, actually. It's rare that we see a horror movie where people are so connected to technology and it's useless to them because they're like trapped in a situation that's entirely real, and you know, that's not going to help them out a lot. Like they use their phones as flashlights, but they can't call for help. There's a hurricane outside. Clever, simple writing. Gets around characters not being able to call for help. I like that. Like I like that these characters are constantly using their phones for light. It feels realistic. It's exactly what young girls would be doing nowadays. I like that when they go out in the rain, like their mascara's running down their face and their makeup's all messed up and their hair's disheveled. And like over the course of the film, these girls just become more and more like craven in appearance because they're just like trying to figure out what the hell's going on in this house, which is great. And I like the who done it mystery of the plot. Like it kept me interested. I didn't exactly know where it was going. There's a couple of lame ducks that make appearances that you feel like, that may not work out, and it may, might actually. I thought the look of this movie was smart, and I didn't mind the kind of overall plot too much. Some of the beat for beat stuff I think is weak, and that's really just in dialogue and scripting. Characters kind of they say things to each other. It doesn't make a lot of sense when you're in a room full of people getting murdered. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that's
and I think
it's the
that kind
comedy
of
stuff.
yeah, and I think that that's where you kind of have to choose your tone. Like, are you going really lean into the realism? Is it going to be more like comedic and a caricature? And this, it's a little over the place. I did want to mention, I really like how it's shot in that somewhat like the power goes out because of course it's a dark and stormy night, and so a lot of the movie is shot in the dark or with people using flashlights or their cell phones, and so that gives a really kind of neat effect because you can never really see everything or everyone when they're in a room. And then several of them also have these glow sticks they're wearing, or like around their neck or around their arms, and so like that gives a really interesting visual dynamic, and it also kind of helps you keep people apart because only a couple of people are wearing them.
Yeah, names of your characters will get lost in the script. You won't remember many people's names, but you will remember the silhouettes. Everybody looks very visually distinct, which is helpful because, you've got five girls who are all crying about their phones for a movie, and you're like, well, I can't keep up with who's who here. They all seem really thin. So having characters who stand out visually helps a lot, and having them have interesting backstories, I think, is important too. Some of them do, some of them don't. It becomes apparent as you're watching the movie that like they're all coming from just copious amounts of wealth. And I don't have any real idea for boundaries or consequences. So as they're running around in this house and bad things continue to happen, they have reactions that seem out of place, and I think that pulls your audience out of the film. Like it you just kind of forget that you're supposed to be watching something that's very serious. Fortunately, it does create space for comedy. You get some really funny moments where Davidson or Rachel Snow like will just crack off a line like in the middle of a dark situation that like nobody laughs at in the film. There's no diegetic laughter, but is funny to us because of the absurdity of the situation. This is also a little weighed down by a script that's very bent on being what people would refer to as like woke nowadays, whatever that word means anymore. It's
Well, it's
the poster says on it, "This is not a safe space. This is supposed to, people talk about characters being toxic or triggered." And that stuff's like fine because I think it fits the generation, but it there's a couple scenes where you're just like, oh my god, I don't care.
well, and I think it's again it's played for laughs, and they just don't really hit. There's a sequence where they literally do a TikTok dance because we've gotten to that place where everyone knows what that that means to do. And
Uh,
like the music they're using is like already outdated. So it's like
months
when
old.
this so when this movie is playing now, it's already outdated in a sense, and it's only going to get more outdated. So I kind of feel this is very much an in the moment film, and like it's not really going to age super well.
Yeah, and I think that like is a perfect place to make our exit on our bodies review, bodies review, because this movie is all about being in the moment, like especially for our characters who are vapid and like so just constantly narcissistic. All of them have personality complexes, and they're constantly looking at themselves over everybody else. It creates a setting for a unique whodunit, but ultimately, yeah, it's probably not going to age very well because it's very modern. And also, is pretty harmless going forward. I don't have any plans to rewatch Bodies. I don't think it's not something I'm like going to rush out and buy the Blu-ray for. Um, I think it's good. If I saw this on TV, I'd probably watch it. Like, yeah, I don't dislike this movie. I think it's good. It's just not, it's not anything to write home about. It's just a solid feature. And that's a fine place for a new director to step into the space and do something different. I like the people in it. I like the lighting and the way it's shot. And I don't know. That's Bodies. I also like the soundtrack. Quick mention. There's a great playlist on Spotify with some good stuff. You should go check out if you like the sound of Bodies. Andy, any other thoughts before recommendations?
No, I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Bodies?
For me, I would say save it for streaming. It is short. It's a nice little self-contained, it's a bottle film essentially, horror movie it's very progressive in its cast and its representation. Um, there are a lot of good performances, there's good cinematography. The story and the mystery are just a little weak and didn't grab me. The dark comedy element of it didn't really grab me either. I also have to remember, like, this is aimed at Gen Z and I'm an elder millennial, so maybe younger folk will maybe relate to it a little bit more, but I didn't as much. So I would say save it for streaming. It was fine.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I liked it more than Andy did, I think. But yeah, you don't gotta run out and see this. This is not the hot new A24 feature. This is not like, it's certainly not like Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's not like you're gonna rush out and tell your friends, oh my god, you gotta go see Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. It's fine. If you're interested, if you like A24, you like horror, you kind of want to see what's going on in this movie, go check it out. You'll probably enjoy it. If not, save for streaming. Yeah, you're not nobody's breaking down the door to talk about Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Like, I think it's a solid feature. I'm interested to see what the director does next. I'll keep up with the cast and see what they got going on. It's Bodies, 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 baby. It's not so bad.